Many people reach a moment in life when they begin to realize that something inside them is changing. It rarely arrives with a dramatic announcement or a single defining event. Instead, it unfolds gradually, almost silently, like a quiet shift beneath the surface of everyday life. One day, you begin to notice that your thoughts are no longer exactly the same as they used to be. The priorities that once guided your decisions begin to evolve. Certain goals that once felt urgent now seem less important, while deeper questions about meaning, purpose, and direction slowly begin to occupy more space in your mind. At first, these changes can be difficult to understand. You may find yourself wondering why the world suddenly feels different, even though everything around you appears the same. Conversations that once felt comfortable might now seem strangely empty. Topics that once held your attention for hours may no longer interest you in the same way. Even the environments that once felt familiar and natural may begin to feel slightly out of alignment with the person you are becoming. For some people, this shift can create a sense of confusion. They may wonder whether they are simply going through a temporary phase or whether something deeper is happening within them. It can feel unsettling to recognize that parts of your life that once felt stable are beginning to change. When familiar patterns start to dissolve, it often leaves space filled with questions rather than clear answers. Yet throughout many spiritual traditions and personal growth journeys, moments like these are rarely considered random. Instead, they are often described as the early signs of transformation. The person is not merely adjusting external circumstances, they are beginning to evolve internally. Old beliefs that once shaped their identity begin to loosen their hold. Habits and perspectives that once felt unquestionable start to be examined more carefully. Slowly, the individual begins to see that some of the ways they once understood themselves and the world no longer fully represent who they are becoming. This process can feel uncomfortable because growth almost always requires change. Letting go of familiar ideas, habits, or expectations is not always easy. Sometimes it can feel as though you are stepping into unfamiliar territory without a clear map. Yet at the same time, there is often a quiet sense of curiosity that accompanies this transformation. Even when uncertainty is present, there may also be a subtle awareness that something meaningful is unfolding. When someone begins to view life through a new perspective, it often signals that they are moving closer to their authentic self. The layers of conditioning, expectations, and past limitations slowly begin to fall away. Beneath those layers exists a deeper identity that may have always been present, but not fully recognized. As this identity becomes clearer, the person begins to feel a stronger connection with their inner values and their personal sense of purpose. You may begin to notice that you are becoming more reflective. You might spend more time thinking about the kind of life you truly want to build. You may feel drawn toward ideas, books, or conversations that explore personal growth, meaning, or spiritual awareness. These interests are not appearing by accident. They often emerge when a person is ready to move into a new stage of understanding. During this stage, it is important to remember that transformation rarely happens overnight. It unfolds gradually, step by step, through moments of awareness and reflection. Each new realization becomes a small piece of a larger picture that is still forming. Even if the direction ahead is not fully clear, every shift in awareness brings you closer to understanding yourself more deeply. This quiet transformation is often the beginning of a powerful journey. It marks the moment when a person begins to question who they have been and explore who they are capable of becoming. While the process may sometimes feel uncertain, it is also filled with the possibility of growth, clarity, and purpose. In this video, we will explore the signs that this transformation may already be happening in your life and what it truly means to move toward the person you were always meant to be. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more insights like this. The first stage of this transformation often appears as a shift in awareness. It does not usually arrive as a sudden realization or a dramatic moment that clearly separates the past from the present. Instead, it unfolds gradually through subtle changes in the way a person thinks, observes, and interprets the world around them. Over time, the individual begins to notice that their thoughts and priorities are no longer exactly the same as they once were. Ideas that once seemed unquestionable may now feel incomplete or overly simplistic. Interests that once dominated their attention may slowly begin to lose their intensity. At first, these shifts can be difficult to recognize because they happen quietly. A person may simply notice that they are asking different kinds of questions than they used to. Where they once focused primarily on achievement, recognition, or external success, they may now find themselves thinking more deeply about the meaning behind their actions. The desire to simply meet expectations begins to fade, and in its place appears a growing curiosity about what truly matters on a personal level. This change in awareness often leads to a new relationship with knowledge and learning. Rather than seeking information only for practical benefits, the individual may begin exploring ideas that help them understand themselves more clearly. Books about philosophy, psychology, spirituality, or personal development may suddenly feel more engaging than before. Conversations that explore deeper ideas may become more meaningful, while casual discussions that once felt enjoyable may now seem less satisfying. The person is not necessarily rejecting the world around them. Instead, they are beginning to perceive it through a wider lens. They start to recognize that life is not defined solely by achievements, schedules, or expectations. Beneath everyday routines exists a deeper layer of understanding about identity, values, and purpose. As this awareness develops, the individual becomes increasingly interested in exploring those deeper layers. Another important sign of inner change is the development of self-awareness. As the transformation continues, the person begins to observe their own thoughts and reactions more carefully. Situations that once triggered immediate responses now become opportunities for reflection. Instead of reacting automatically, they begin to pause and examine their emotions more closely. For example, when faced with frustration or disappointment, they may begin asking themselves why the situation affects them in a certain way. They may reflect on past experiences that shaped their reactions, or question whether their response truly reflects their current values. This habit of reflection allows them to understand themselves with greater clarity. Over time, this increased awareness begins to reveal patterns that were previously unnoticed. The individual may recognize habits that once felt natural, but now seem limiting. They might notice how certain environments influence their mood, or how certain interactions affect their energy. This recognition creates an opportunity to make more intentional choices about how they engage with the world around them. As self-awareness grows, the individual also begins to understand their emotions with greater depth. Emotions that once felt overwhelming may now be examined more thoughtfully. Instead of suppressing or ignoring these feelings, they learn to interpret them as signals that provide insight into their internal state. Anger may reveal unresolved boundaries. Anxiety may highlight areas where uncertainty needs attention. Joy may point toward experiences that align with their true values. Through this process, emotions become less mysterious and more informative. The individual begins to view them not as obstacles, but as guides that reveal important information about their inner life. This shift in perspective strengthens their ability to navigate complex situations with patience and clarity. One of the most significant outcomes of this growing awareness is a deeper understanding of personal values. As individuals reflect on their past decisions and experiences, they may begin to recognize that many of their choices were influenced by external expectations. Family traditions, social norms, cultural pressures, or professional ambitions may have shaped the direction of their lives more strongly than they realized. While these influences are a natural part of human development, there often comes a point when a person begins to question whether those expectations still align with who they are becoming. They may ask themselves whether certain goals truly reflect their own desires, or whether they were adopted simply because they seemed like the correct path at the time. This questioning does not necessarily lead to rejection of past experiences. Instead, it allows the individual to evaluate those experiences with greater honesty. They begin identifying which aspects of their past still resonate with their authentic identity, and which ones may no longer serve their growth. As this clarity develops, the individual gradually begins aligning their choices with their true values. Decisions become less about meeting external approval and more about maintaining internal integrity. They start prioritizing activities, relationships, and goals that reflect their deeper understanding of what matters most to them. However, this stage of transformation can also bring unexpected challenges. As perspectives change, the person may begin to notice subtle differences between their evolving mindset and the attitudes of those around them. Friends, colleagues, or family members may still operate within familiar patterns that once felt comfortable, but now feel slightly out of alignment. Conversations that once felt effortless may now feel somewhat disconnected. Topics that once created enthusiasm may now seem repetitive or superficial. The individual may find themselves listening more quietly, reflecting internally, rather than participating in discussions that no longer feel meaningful. This shift can create a temporary sense of distance. It may seem as though the individual is gradually stepping away from the social rhythms that once defined their daily life. Yet this distance is not necessarily a sign of separation or rejection. Rather, it reflects the natural process of recalibrating one's perspective. When a person begins developing greater clarity about their identity and values, they naturally become more selective about how they spend their time and attention. They may seek conversations that encourage thoughtful reflection. They may gravitate toward environments that support personal growth. They may also begin setting boundaries that protect their emotional and mental well-being. During this period, it is important to remember that transformation does not require abandoning relationships or isolating oneself from others. Instead, it encourages a more conscious way of engaging with the world. The individual learns to appreciate connections that support authenticity, while gradually releasing patterns that encourage conformity at the expense of personal truth. As the process continues, the person begins to recognize their authentic voice more clearly. This voice represents the inner guidance that reflects their genuine beliefs, values, and aspirations. For many years, it may have been overshadowed by external expectations or social pressures. But as awareness grows, this inner voice becomes easier to hear. Learning to trust this voice requires patience. At first, it may feel unfamiliar or uncertain. Yet with practice, the individual begins to recognize the difference between decisions motivated by fear and those guided by authenticity. They learn to listen more closely to their intuition and to evaluate choices based on their alignment with personal values. This clarity becomes the foundation for the next phase of growth. By understanding their thoughts, emotions, and motivations more deeply, the individual gains the ability to move forward with intention rather than confusion. The transformation that began as a subtle shift in awareness gradually evolves into a more deliberate journey toward authenticity. In this way, the signs of inner change represent far more than simple adjustments in behavior or perspective. They signal the beginning of a deeper process of self-discovery. Through reflection, awareness, and honest evaluation, the individual begins uncovering the qualities that define their true identity. Although the journey may still contain uncertainty, the presence of this awareness provides an important source of direction. With each new insight, the person moves closer to understanding who they are and who they are capable of becoming. As inner awareness continues to grow, another important stage often begins to unfold. The individual gradually starts to recognize that certain aspects of their old identity no longer reflect who they are becoming. This realization can feel both freeing and unsettling at the same time. On one hand, there is relief in discovering that change is possible and that growth is unfolding. On the other hand, there is uncertainty in realizing that familiar patterns, beliefs, and roles may no longer belong in the next chapter of their life. For many people, identity develops slowly over years of experience. It is shaped by family expectations, cultural influences, education, relationships, and the environments in which a person spends their time. Over time, these influences form a collection of beliefs about who someone is supposed to be and how they are expected to behave. These beliefs can provide structure and stability during earlier stages of life, guiding decisions and helping individuals navigate social systems that require cooperation and adaptation. However, as awareness deepens, a person may begin to see that not every aspect of their identity was created through conscious choice. Some habits may have been adopted simply because they were encouraged by others. Some goals may have been pursued because they seemed like the correct path, rather than because they truly reflected personal aspirations. In the early stages of life, following these patterns may have felt natural, even necessary. But as transformation unfolds, the individual begins to question whether these patterns still align with their evolving sense of self. This moment of recognition often marks the beginning of a process that can be described as releasing the old self. It is not about rejecting the past or denying the experiences that shaped a person's identity. Instead, it is about evaluating which parts of that identity remain meaningful and which ones have become limitations. Growth naturally reveals that some beliefs or behaviors that once provided stability may now restrict further development. Letting go of these outdated patterns rarely happens quickly. Habits formed over many years tend to become deeply ingrained in everyday behavior. Certain ways of thinking may have been reinforced repeatedly through social validation or personal success. Because of this, the process of change requires patience and careful reflection. A person may begin by noticing small inconsistencies between their actions and their emerging values. For example, they may realize that certain habits no longer support their well-being. Activities that once provided comfort may now feel draining or unproductive. Behaviors that were once automatic may now appear misaligned with their deeper understanding of who they want to become. Recognizing these patterns is often the first step toward releasing them. Once the individual becomes aware that certain habits are no longer serving their growth, they can begin making more intentional choices. This might involve gradually replacing old routines with new ones that better reflect their priorities. It may also require setting boundaries that protect their time, energy, and mental clarity. In some cases, letting go of the old self may also involve reevaluating environments that once felt familiar. Certain settings may encourage behaviors or attitudes that conflict with the person's evolving perspective. For example, environments that emphasize constant competition, negativity, or superficial validation may no longer feel comfortable for someone who is seeking deeper meaning and authenticity. This does not necessarily mean rejecting the people or communities associated with those environments. Rather, it often means becoming more mindful about where one chooses to invest attention and energy. As individuals grow, they may naturally gravitate towards spaces that support reflection, creativity, learning, and emotional well-being. Another complex aspect of this stage involves relationships. As priorities shift and perspectives evolve, some relationships may also begin to change. This can be one of the most emotionally challenging parts of personal transformation. Relationships often develop around shared interests, routines, or ways of thinking. When one person begins to grow in a new direction, the dynamic within those relationships may shift as well. Some relationships adapt and continue to grow alongside the individual's transformation. Others may gradually become less central in the person's life. This shift does not always occur through conflict or deliberate separation. Often it happens quietly, as the paths of two individuals begin to diverge naturally. Experiencing these changes can create feelings of uncertainty. When familiar structures begin to dissolve, the individual may feel as though they are standing between two versions of themselves. The identity that once felt stable no longer fully reflects who they are becoming, yet the new identity has not fully taken shape. This transitional period can feel confusing because it lacks clear definitions. During this stage, a person may question their direction more frequently. They may wonder whether the changes they are experiencing are temporary or whether they truly represent a deeper transformation. The absence of immediate clarity can create moments of doubt, especially when external validation is limited. Yet this stage of uncertainty is often a necessary part of growth. Just as a seed must break open before it can grow into a plant, the process of transformation requires a period where old structures loosen before new ones become fully established. Without this space for transition, genuine change would be difficult to achieve. The discomfort that sometimes accompanies this process serves an important purpose. It encourages the individual to rely less on external expectations and more on internal awareness. Instead of automatically following familiar patterns, they begin to ask deeper questions about what truly supports their well-being and long-term development. As they continue moving through this stage, the individual gradually learns that identity is not fixed. Many people grow up believing that who they are must remain consistent throughout their lives. However, personal transformation reveals that identity can evolve as awareness expands and experiences accumulate. Recognizing this flexibility allows individuals to approach life with greater openness. Rather than feeling confined by past roles or labels, they begin to see themselves as participants in an ongoing process of growth. Each new insight becomes an opportunity to refine their understanding of who they are and who they wish to become. Through this process, the individual begins making more conscious decisions about what they choose to carry forward into the future. Some values from the past remain meaningful and continue to guide their choices. Others are gently released because they no longer align with the direction their life is taking. This act of choosing what to keep and what to release represents a powerful moment of personal responsibility. Instead of allowing identity to be shaped entirely by external circumstances, the individual begins shaping it intentionally. They become more aware of the qualities they want to cultivate and the principles they want to embody. Over time, this conscious approach to identity creates a stronger sense of alignment between inner values and outward behavior. The individual begins living in a way that feels more authentic because their actions reflect their evolving understanding of themselves. Although the process of letting go can be emotionally complex, it ultimately creates the space necessary for growth. By releasing outdated beliefs, habits, and influences, the individual opens the door for new possibilities to emerge. Perspectives that were once hidden become visible. Opportunities that once seemed distant become attainable. Gradually, the person begins to realize that transformation is not about abandoning the past, but about integrating its lessons while moving forward. Each stage of life contributes to the development of wisdom and self-understanding. By embracing change rather than resisting it, individuals allow their identity to evolve in ways that reflect their deepest aspirations. In this way, letting go of the old self becomes one of the most meaningful steps in the journey toward becoming who one was meant to be. It is the moment when the individual moves beyond the limitations of their past and begins shaping a future guided by authenticity, awareness, and intentional growth. As the transformation continues, something remarkable begins to take place within the individual. The confusion and uncertainty that once dominated the earlier stages of change slowly begin to fade. In their place, a growing sense of clarity starts to emerge. It may not arrive all at once, and it may not feel dramatic or overwhelming. Instead, it appears gradually, like a quiet realization that begins to shape the way a person understands themselves and the direction their life is moving toward. Where there was once doubt, there is now a subtle but steady confidence. The individual begins to notice that their thoughts, decisions, and actions are becoming more aligned with one another. Instead of constantly questioning every choice or seeking reassurance from others, they begin to trust their own judgment more fully. This trust does not come from arrogance or stubbornness. It comes from the quiet understanding that has developed through reflection, experience, and personal growth. During earlier stages of transformation, many people spend a great deal of energy searching for validation. They may look to friends, family members, or society for confirmation that they are making the right decisions. This need for approval often comes from uncertainty about one's identity or direction. When a person is unsure of who they truly are, external opinions can feel like necessary guidance. However, as the journey progresses, something begins to shift. The individual gradually realizes that while advice and feedback can be valuable, the most important guidance often comes from within. Through the experiences they have faced, they have developed an inner sense of awareness that helps them evaluate situations more clearly. Their intuition becomes stronger because it is supported by the lessons they have learned along the way. This growing trust in oneself makes decision-making feel different. Choices that once seemed overwhelming now appear more manageable. Instead of analyzing every possibility out of fear of making a mistake, the individual begins to consider what aligns with their deeper values. Decisions become simpler because they are guided by authenticity rather than external pressure. At this stage, it becomes clear that transformation is not about turning into someone entirely new. It is not about abandoning one identity and replacing it with another. Instead, the process often reveals that the person they are becoming has always existed beneath the surface. Over time, layers of doubt, expectation, and conditioning had simply obscured that identity. Throughout life, people often absorb countless messages about who they should be. These messages may come from cultural norms, educational systems, family traditions, or social expectations. While many of these influences provide useful guidance, they can also create limitations when they discourage individuals from exploring their authentic selves. As personal transformation unfolds, these layers gradually begin to fall away. Beliefs that once felt unquestionable are examined with greater awareness. Expectations that once dictated behavior are reconsidered in light of personal values. Through this process, the individual begins to uncover a clearer understanding of who they truly are. This discovery often brings a renewed sense of confidence. It is not the kind of confidence that relies on comparison with others or on external achievements. Instead, it comes from alignment. The individual begins to feel that their thoughts, actions, and intentions are moving in the same direction. This alignment creates a sense of stability that was difficult to achieve during earlier stages of uncertainty. Alongside this confidence comes a deeper understanding of purpose. During the earlier phases of transformation, many people spend time questioning their past experiences. They may wonder why certain challenges occurred, or why their journey seemed more complicated than expected. It is natural to reflect on these moments and ask whether things could have been different. Yet as clarity develops, the individual begins to see these experiences through a new perspective. Events that once seemed frustrating or painful begin to reveal their role in shaping the person they have become. Difficult moments often taught resilience. Disappointments encourage deeper reflection. Unexpected changes open the door to opportunities that might never have appeared otherwise. Instead of viewing past struggles as mistakes or misfortunes, the individual begins to recognize them as important steps in their personal evolution. Each challenge contributed to the development of qualities such as patience, empathy, strength, and insight. Without those experiences, the person they are today might not exist. This shift in perspective allows individuals to approach their journey with greater acceptance. Rather than wishing the past had unfolded differently, they begin to appreciate the lessons it provided. The past becomes a source of wisdom rather than regret. With this clarity often comes a desire to contribute something meaningful to the world. Personal growth naturally expands a person's awareness of the struggles and aspirations that others experience. When someone has spent time reflecting on their own journey, they often develop a deeper sensitivity toward the journeys of others. This awareness can inspire a natural desire to offer encouragement or insight. Some individuals may feel drawn to share their experiences openly. Others may choose to support people in quieter ways, through listening, mentoring, or simply offering understanding when someone is facing difficulty. Contribution does not always require grand gestures or public recognition. Often, the most meaningful influence occurs through everyday interactions. A thoughtful conversation, a moment of empathy, or an example of resilience can inspire others more than dramatic displays of achievement. In this way, the growth of one individual can quietly affect the lives of many others. People who are searching for direction often find encouragement in observing someone who has navigated uncertainty with patience and honesty. Seeing someone live authentically can remind others that transformation is possible. However, it is important to remember that becoming who you were meant to be is not a single moment of realization. It is not an event that occurs once and then remains unchanged forever. Instead, it is an ongoing process that continues throughout life. Even after reaching greater clarity, new experiences will continue to shape understanding. New challenges will appear that require further growth. Opportunities will arise that encourage individuals to explore different aspects of their identity. Each stage of life introduces new lessons that deepen awareness. Because of this, transformation should never be viewed as something that has a final destination. It is more accurate to see it as a continuous journey of discovery. Every experience contributes another layer of insight, gradually refining a person's understanding of themselves and their place in the world. The most important element in this journey is the willingness to keep moving forward with honesty and courage. Authentic growth requires individuals to remain open to change, even when that change feels uncertain. It requires the courage to listen to one's inner voice and the honesty to acknowledge when old patterns no longer serve a meaningful purpose. Every step taken with authenticity strengthens the connection between who a person is and who they are becoming. Each moment of reflection reinforces their ability to live with intention rather than habit. Over time, these choices accumulate, shaping a life that reflects genuine values and aspirations. When viewed from this perspective, the process of becoming who you are meant to be is not about reaching perfection. It is about living with awareness. It is about allowing each experience to guide you toward greater understanding, compassion, and purpose. Through patience, reflection, and trust in the journey, the individual gradually discovers that the person they were searching for has been developing within them all along. If you have noticed changes within yourself, if you have begun questioning old patterns or searching for deeper meaning in your life, it may be a sign that you are moving through an important stage of transformation. These moments of reflection are not unusual, and they are not signs that something is wrong. In many cases, they are signals that your awareness is expanding and that you are beginning to see life from a more thoughtful and intentional perspective. Many people move through long periods of life simply following familiar patterns. They repeat routines, pursue expectations that have been placed before them, and rarely pause to ask whether those patterns truly reflect who they are becoming. But when someone begins to question those routines and explore deeper meaning, it often marks the beginning of a significant shift in understanding. It means they are no longer moving through life on autopilot. Instead, they are becoming more conscious of their choices, their values, and the direction they want their life to take. The path of the chosen one is rarely defined by comfort or simplicity. In fact, it often includes moments of uncertainty, reflection, and personal challenge. Growth requires individuals to examine parts of themselves that they may have previously ignored. It requires them to reconsider habits that once felt familiar and to explore new possibilities that may initially feel unfamiliar. Although this process can sometimes feel difficult, it is also where genuine transformation begins. Every moment of reflection adds another layer of understanding. Each challenge encourages the development of resilience and clarity. Over time, the experiences that once seemed confusing start to reveal a deeper pattern. They show how each stage of the journey has contributed to shaping the person you are becoming. It is important to remember that you do not need to have every answer right now. Many people believe they must have their entire future clearly defined before they can feel confident in their path. Yet personal growth rarely follows such a predictable structure. Transformation happens gradually. It unfolds through experiences, insights, and small decisions that accumulate over time. Each realization you have contributes to a larger process of understanding. Each step forward, even when it feels uncertain, adds to the foundation of who you are becoming. What matters most is not how quickly the process unfolds, but the sincerity with which you continue to explore it. Trusting this process can sometimes require patience. There may be moments when the path ahead is not fully visible. You may feel as though you are moving through a period of transition without clear answers. Yet these moments often play a crucial role in growth, because they encourage deeper reflection and stronger self-awareness. The lessons you have already experienced are valuable. Every challenge you have faced, every moment that required strength or courage, has contributed to your development. Those experiences have shaped your perspective and strengthened your ability to navigate life with greater wisdom. When you begin to see your journey in this way, it becomes easier to trust the direction it is taking. The changes you are experiencing are not signs of losing yourself. They are signs that you are gradually discovering the person who has always existed beneath the surface of past expectations and limitations. Trust the process that is unfolding in your life. Trust the lessons you have learned along the way. And most importantly, trust the person you are becoming, because that person may be closer than you realize to the one you were always meant to be. If this message resonated with you, remember to like the video, share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.